All right, this is Patrick Rogers, and today we have the privilege to have Sean Stanley on the show, and Sean's the CEO of EcoTwist. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thank you so much, Patrick.
Yeah, you bet, man. So it is not an exaggeration to say that he was born an entrepreneur, right? After all, he turned a job bagging groceries at the age of 17 into a long and successful career at Harris Teeter. At Harris Teeter, Sean climbed the corporate ladder operational on the meat side of the business, jumped over into becoming a category manager on the meat side, helping buying, and then moving on to non-perishable category side of business. And it was here that he really got into the laundry detergent space, became a lot more intimate and really knowledgeable in that space, and kind of fell in love with that industry. So after his time with Harris Teeter, Sean set his sights on doing something new. He took his skills to a company called HEX Performance, an activewear laundry detergent company, where he became VP of Business Development. And from there, he went on to found his own company, EcoTwist Clean, which is an eco-effective product. I'm gonna let Sean really speak to more about that. He'll do a lot better job. But Sean's also involved with another very interesting company, which we definitely want to talk about as well. But he's now involved with helping taking retailers and their brands into the marketplace with another project called White Space Brands. So again, Sean, you're an entrepreneur. Great to have you on the show. Before we dig into your companies and your journey and everything in there, what's one interesting fact that not many people know about you?
I've lived in 8 states in Canada. So
okay, yeah,
8 states in Canada. So my dad was also in the military, and so I was
Oh.
born in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. I've lived in Oklahoma twice, Ohio once, Maryland, Georgia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Rhode Island, and Toronto.
Okay.
So I think it's all 8 states. So yeah, I'm well lived and versed a little bit throughout the eastern part and southern part of the country.
Very cool. We've lived in a lot of some similar states. Being in the Navy, I was in South Carolina, went all over the place. But yeah, man, very cool. And I see your background here for those listening and not on the YouTube. You can't see, but there's quite a few Pittsburgh paraphernalia there. So I'm just gonna throw it out there and assume you're a Steelers fan, right?
Yeah, I am a Steeler fan. I'm very blessed to have been born into that gritty atmosphere in the town in Pittsburgh from, because it really is who I am, is where I'm from. And that's very true with me, and that grit that comes with that city. But I'm also, I got to tell you, I've lived more than half my life here. I'm a big Panther fan. I'm a huge Hornet fan.
Yep, saw that.
So, Penguins. We don't want to forget.
Don't forget the Penguins,
who still actually have a chance to do something this year. So yeah, I'm big sports fan in general. But
cool.
But I got to pull for all.
I know what you do on your weekends.
Work, actually, believe it or not.
Work. Oh no, that's not the right answer.
Set up in the production room. I have a TV, especially.
Okay, there you go. See, you're multitasking. All right.
Yeah, exactly. Otherwise, I'd be sitting around doing nothing.
This may be an obvious question because you're back in Pittsburgh now, right?
No, we're actually based in Charlotte, North Carolina.
You are in Charlotte. Okay, so I was going to ask you where's, out of all the places you've lived, where is your favorite place? And it might be where you're at now, but
I got to tell you, the most favorite place I lived was probably Maryland. I lived on the eastern shore of Maryland. It's really the first adult, decision I made, because a lot of it was moving around as a kid.
Yeah.
But you're so close to DC, you're so close to the ocean, you're 4 hours from New York City, you're 2 hours from Philadelphia, you're 2 hours from Baltimore. It's
pretty central.
Yeah, you're a long way from a lot of stuff ish. Like there's not a lot right there, but the Ocean City, Maryland is really close, and Assateague. So I think I just got a little bit of and we lived on the Eastern Shore too, which is a way roll. So being able to cross that bridge every day was pretty cool. And going over both bridges, the Chesapeake Bay and the Chesapeake Bay Bridge Tunnel was pretty cool, because coming from Charlotte and driving up there, you go through the tunnel to get into Norfolk.
Yeah. Isn't that like the longest bridge in America?
I think so. I definitely think it is the longest one in the United States. It's 22 and a half miles long.
22. Yeah.
It does have one patch of land, and then it is way longer than the one in the Keys. Way longer. I think 2 or 3 times longer than the.
Yeah. Keys is like 6 or 7 miles or something.
There's two tunnels. there's two tunnels. So it's pretty cool because that's where, that's the opening to the Chesapeake Bay. And so you talk
Yeah.
about Navy, a lot of Navy ships and things like that. It's just amazing to go down this roadway, and
Yeah.
you just see a dip where it's just ocean and you've got these huge ships coming into the bay.
Yeah. I
It's just
mean, it is pretty crazy to think about that. You got to take a car in the tunnel and go down far enough so that a freaking aircraft carrier can go over top of you.
literally an aircraft carrier, and it is the weirdest thing in the world. And it's just if you've never taken that trip, guys, it's one of the most beautiful parts of this of the country. And it's where the wild horses run everywhere. Chincoteague, Assateague, Outer Banks, it's all the barrier islands. That's
Yeah.
probably, yeah. And the West Coast is my favorite part of the country. I think you and I talked about this before.
Right. Right.
To drive from Seattle to Portland is one of the coolest drives I've ever been on, where you're passing these trees, and Mount St. Helens is like way off in the distance. And it's just, it's I've been pretty blessed in the sales role.
Yeah.
For 3 years with
Uh-huh.
the other company was, to be able to get around this country. I've been to 47 states.
Yeah. It's awesome.
The oddest ones I'm missing is Alaska, which makes sense, but
Yeah.
both Dakotas. There's just nothing
You
in
haven't
my,
been to the Dakota?
no.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's pretty flat there. That's all I know. I only went there because one of my fraternity brothers in college, he was like a huge hockey player. I mean, this kid he was like Eric Swanson. He's my buddy, but he was, I don't know, 5'9" or something, not that
Oh
tall, but
wow.
yeah, he played Division I hockey. His legs were like ham hocks,
Yeah,
man.
yeah. I'll bet.
I was probably, I had 40 pounds on him. He'd be like 5 feet away from me and he would check me and I'd go flying into the boards and
The
just,
center
yeah.
of gravity is so low on skates.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
But the diversity of the country, and just whenever I travel, I would go around and I would intentionally be around, like in the towns and around the people, and just kind of, I would go to the shopping malls and just look around, see what's local, see the way
yeah.
people were and dressed and act. And yeah, it's a huge country, as you know. I don't think many of us Americans do actually get around to seeing a lot of them.
Appreciate it. Yeah, totally,
Yeah.
man. Totally. Awesome. So tell us about your companies, man. Tell us about EcoTwist and Whitespace.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, the White Space Branding is the company that I formed in 2018 when I left Hex. When I left Hex, there were a couple opportunities to maybe find another job or something like that. But I had come from a career for 26 years with Harris Teeter, and so I felt like, I had worked for the best company that I possibly could, and then everything after that was a job. And so I just decided that I wanted to create brands. I wanted to be a part of the CPG world, but
Mm,
not necessarily in the ways that I had already been. I learned a lot on the sales side, being a retailer, and I understood that there was just a lot of opportunity out there. And so white
mm,
space is the term that I used when I would take over a new category in the industry, and you'd have to learn it, and you'd
mhm,
have to
mhm.
kind of see it from the outside in and see what's missing. It's
Yeah.
not what's there as much as what's not there. And so you'd have to learn it by looking at other retailers, looking at industry. Um, and so to me, it was always fun to go into a new category and develop what's obviously missing and glaring. And so what white space does is it concentrates on those missing and glaring needs at retailers,
Yeah.
and we'll find the solution to get things made with innovation that may not be readily available in the marketplace. We just maybe dig a little bit deeper and put a little bit more work into finding the right item for the right retailer. So that's part of what we do.
So for the white space one, before we dive into EcoTwist, if there was somebody listening to this, who would be like your typical retailer that, may help us understand, what kind of size company, where would they be in their startup if there was somebody that wanted to say, hey, you know what, Sean, help me out, man.
Yeah. So what it is if you look at it from a store brand standpoint. So if I worked at Harris Teeter. I'm not saying that we do this at Harris Teeter, but
Right.
when I was a buyer at Harris Teeter and a category manager, our way to have some points of differentiation between us and competitor ABC was to develop items that you couldn't find in other stores. And we
Okay.
took a lot of great pride into developing what we called HT Trader, which was an upper end better than a national brand equivalent, much better. In fact, it was very cool, unique, different.
Mm,
It always tended to focus on maybe an international flair or
mm,
whatever it is. It would always be that upscale piece. And so really there's a big market for that in the rest of the country. Most retailers don't engage in that. They tend to look at their private brand as more as a way to compete with low priced brands rather
mm.
than a way to entice customers. But if you look at Harris Teeter, they do it right. You look at Whole Foods, they do it right. Trader Joe's, they do it right, where their brand has a lot more value than,
Mm.
I don't want to say another retail, because that's not the point. The point is to be able to take your brand, for whatever brand that
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
elevate it.
absolutely.
Yeah. And so, you have little brands around the
Brand
country.
awareness, sure.
Interestingly, a lot of the big companies and CPGs drove this innovation. We always, as buyers, had the big CPGs coming to us and saying, "Hey, this is what's coming. This is what's new." And a lot of that stuff was being driven when COVID hit. Everybody had to get down to the basics. All the bigger companies, no matter who they were, you had to get
Mm,
down to the basics, big or small. And so innovation is the one thing that was lost in COVID and in our world of the CPG and retail space. You're not really seeing too much of it come back, but you're especially not seeing it at all on the private brand or the store brand side. And what we're doing specifically there is we're connecting, because we're more involved in it. We are buying the brands in a sense. We are going to co-packers, getting these things produced,
mm.
and we in turn sell that to the retailer that's in need. A lot of, it's us taking a little bit of a guess based on a
Sure. Yeah,
hypothesis or some information
yeah.
and presenting it somewhere. And then if we get some good news and we like the feedback, we take it somewhere else and take it somewhere else. And then we partner with manufacturers to get those things done. And so that
Awesome.
it's great for them because there's not a lot of risk for them. And it's great for us because we don't necessarily have to account for the labor force and the production of the item. We can just rely
Right,
on trusted
right.
co-packers to do so.
Got it. Got it. Okay, cool. So yeah,
Yeah.
man. So tell us some more about EcoTwist, your bread and
Yeah,
butter.
EcoTwist is, I got to tell you, white space is my part-time job, I call it, to take care of my love of EcoTwist. And so EcoTwist is it is more than just a product. It's more than just a detergent. So EcoTwist is my way to build a company around values and morals that I feel like are missing a little bit out in the business world today.
Wow,
It's more of a people first mentality. And the
love
way
it.
I explain that is, we give 1% of every penny we make, we give back, not 1% of our profits, 1% of every bit of revenue that we generate, we give back to something. And often it's more than 1%.
Like a nonprofit type thing,
Yeah,
or
typically a nonprofit. I'll give you an example. I've got a really dear friend of mine that I worked at Harris Teeter with for a long, long time. She has ALS, so we do a lot with ALS to support her. Not as much as we want to, of course, but we're going to continue to really dive into that. There are some domestic abuse shelters that we give detergent to. We also give them detergent to sell in their store so that they can take those profits. So they're all little things. We work with a nonprofit that helps with kids that are in foster care, but at weird ages,
yeah,
10, 12, 14 years old,
yeah,
where they're taken out
yeah.
of homes. And so it's a rough situation. And a big
So
part of me likes to be
yeah,
a part of that.
no, that's awesome, man. So
Yeah.
there's some companies out there that are more philanthropy involved than others, and I guarantee almost every CEO out there is saying to themselves, I want to do it. I've been meaning to do it. I just haven't done it. Right. What do you say to, like, how do you think giving back this 1% that you give back to nonprofit, do you think that impacts your team and your people and how they approach their
Yeah.
everyday?
I love that, the way you pose that, because I don't often think about, I would say it this way. Yeah, it very much impacts them. And I'll tell you why. It's because everybody on my team is very like-minded. And a lot of the people we support, no matter who it is, we support something with our team as well if it's important to them. We have one of the guys that we work with, great guy, his self adopted a kid that was in need. He had his own family with 3 kids already, and he was a basketball coach. His son played basketball, but there was a kid that needed a lot more than he was getting. And so Daryl literally went through the process over a couple of years of not only having the kid live there, but then ended up adopting him.
Mm.
And so, to me, I've surrounded myself with a lot of people that
Hmm.
also think like me. I think that's the
Yeah.
power. If you take a
Okay.
company that's an existing company, they're built around
Yeah.
profit structures.
Sure.
And
Sure.
that's, hey, listen, I understand that. I'm just saying this much more could go towards that. We're
Just a
not on
sliver.
Wall Street.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a sliver. It is it's so small. For instance, like we need to make a little bit more money, a bottom line profit. So the first thing we do, rather than to look at like inventory costs, look at anything else that maybe we can cut down. Is there anything do we need a couple company cars, things like that? The first thing we do is we lay off human beings, because you know what? That's the
Because it's
easiest thing
easy. It's the most
to
expensive
do.
thing for, most companies. Manufacturing might be a little bit different, but yeah.
Yeah, well, to be honest with you, no, it's the most expensive resource that you're going to have if you
Sure.
look at people as that. And
Yeah.
so that's the problem, is we look at people as parts to building something, or a component to a business, rather than the human element of what they are. That's It's just so small. It doesn't, because when I say that we put people before profits, it's not that we don't care about profits. It's just that we can do so much good by helping other folks. And
Mm.
I think a lot of the companies, we started technically around the end of 19. I think a lot of companies that started around 1920, especially when COVID hit, are more whether it be they're more purpose driven.
More purpose driven.
Purpose driven.
Yeah. Well, it's and
We
people
are.
too. It's Gallup, it's either Gallup or McKinsey and Company. They came out with a stat that basically said that 88% of millennials want to work for a company that is aligned with solving some of the major problems of the human race. And it's a
That's
big deal.
that is a huge deal, because you've got Gen Z behind the millennials, right? And they're just
Even more so.
yeah, even more so.
Even more so.
You know, I've got a 17-year-old that barely she's almost 17, and she is
Uh-huh.
barely, I think it started in '08 is when the actual Gen Z started. So those
Yeah.
kids
Okay.
are starting to have a voice. But so the millennials are very, very well read. I think the millennials don't necessarily take commercials for facts. They're not followers, although they
Mm.
do listen to a lot of chatter, social
Sure.
chatter.
Sure. Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a following, but they do tend to make their own decisions based on
Right.
their own research. And so from a product standpoint, we've known this since the mid 2000s. Really, when I started becoming a buyer, was that generation was going to really impact and change the way that the CPG world functions. And millennials are pushing our boundaries. And I got to tell you, for us, we do have a very eco detergent. We haven't talked much, but we do
Yeah.
have a very eco detergent, but we also have an eco detergent that's in an eco box, which is 72% less plastic. We do have plastic bottles, because I got to tell you, 80% of the people uh, buy liquid detergent in plastic bottles. And so you can't really get away from the plastic,
Right.
but
Right.
we can, as a brand new brand and a brand new company, we certainly can take and give customers the option between a bottle and
Or
a
a box.
pod,
Could
which
could you do recycled plastic, or is that just
we
insanely?
we do already. Yeah,
Oh,
we
you
do
do already. Okay.
we do post-consumer recycled plastic. But again, I think the major problem isn't whether even the cardboard is recyclable or not.
Right.
The truth of it is since we've stopped sending to all Asian countries towards the end of 2016, all of our recycled plastic,
Uh-huh.
which was, I'm pretty sure it was around 2016.
Okay.
All the Asian companies stopped accepting all Western plastic just because they were overburdened themselves. And so all the small towns and governments used to make a little bit of a profit on the recycling. And
Mm.
now it's not a profitable thing. It's actually costing them
It's a
money to
cost.
run. And
Yeah.
therefore, recycling is very expensive. And a lot of times, admittedly, they go into landfills. Like, that's very well documented. You can search that on
Sure.
NPR and
Sure.
a couple other places. And so the problem isn't, are we recycling? Because I think over the last 20, 25 years, as a country, we feel
Mm.
good about putting 2 trash cans out.
Yeah.
Bottom line is, it's not getting recycled. It's still going into landfills. And so what do we do to combat that? And
Wow.
so what you got to do is you got to just change. Somebody's got to change something. We've got to
Yeah.
stop using single-use plastic. I'm not a global warming guy, and I'm actually pretty moderate in every level,
Sure.
but single-use plastic is literally choking out parts of the Pacific Ocean. It's not just
Wow.
consumer goods, it's plastic nets. It's a lot of things in the middle of the between
Right.
Japan and the United States that's huge. It's an
It's
island.
interesting though that, I mean, maybe I missed a little bit of what you were talking about, but you're saying that, like, even though people have two bins out there, one's full of your plastics, what you're saying is a lot of that is not going to end up being recycled. A lot of that will still end up going to a landfill.
Yeah, and I would urge everybody that's listening to check with your local town. Your local town would probably tell you that pretty openly and honestly. I've heard
What the
several.
heck? Then why even do it? Like, why
But
even
I
bother?
think there's a system now that, well, because they are doing some of there are some recyclable things that they are sourcing through. It's
Yeah.
just not what you think. It's not detergent bottles and it's not plastic. It's like sometimes it's glass and other things that's inside of there. The idea is, I guess the reason that they don't say that, hey, we're doing this so you don't need two trash cans is because, it's been so much communication on recycle, recycle, recycle. But
Right. Right.
again, I would just urge everybody to check with
Yeah. Do
your
your own research.
town. Yeah, because it's true. It's happening. It's happening.
Yeah. So I want to come back to a point you made before, is like, hey, if we want to increase profit, improve our margins, we don't look at our people first. We look at other things. I think that's fantastic because, I mean, it's easier to say than do. I guess depending on the company, right? But you are going out of your way. It would be a last ditch effort, the last alternative to have to let people go versus other whatever creative ways there are to do it.
Yeah, depending on the situation, I mean, I'm certainly not adverse to making hard choices and decisions, but when you've got people in there and they're worried about their job all the time, what kind of productivity are you going to get? And if they know
Nothing.
that you're
Yeah.
investing in them, they invest in you.
Yeah.
If you treat them like employees, they will treat you like a job.
Yeah.
And I think that's all the difference in the world.
Yeah, there was somebody else on the podcast, and they came down to a moment. It was, I forget who it was, but it was very similar. They were faced with having to lay off like 50 people, or take on a loan, and they took on a loan and they kept everybody through it.
Yeah,
And
awesome.
but they buttoned up. They really brought everybody on board. I don't think they were running as tight of a ship as they needed to be before. They really brought people on board with KPIs and really, taking ownership, and they, took off. They didn't have to. That was like 10 years ago or so. I think it was
I think
2008.
that's a great point too, because I think if you invest too much in people, it ends up looking like sloppy business. Maybe you should have been tightened up in a lot of other places prior to that. But if to let one or two people, look at all the small towns that we still have a lot of small towns, and we shut down factories and plants.
Yeah.
And
Oh,
you're putting
totally.
all these people out of work, and then that has a trickle effect all the way down through the economy. And and if you look at a retailer like a Walmart, which, listen, Walmart, it has grown organically. They not bought any other retailers to get to where they're at. But
Right.
if you would take the thought process of, hey, you know what? There are towns out here that need jobs. We could
Mm,
do our own manufacturing of our own products. Think about detergent for a minute. I got to tell you, I'm a pretty we're a pretty simplistic organization, and we run a pretty tight ship ourselves. And we could do a program for Walmart's here, and then think about all the profitability. You think about, you're putting people to work, a lot of pride in the community, and all those other things. But retailers don't necessarily think like that, and that's
yeah.
cool
Yeah.
because it's an 80-20 rule. But yeah, people first, and everything else will follow. The other thing that you could do, that I've thought through, because I have thought through scenarios when we get to the point. I wouldn't be opposed to taking everybody and asking everybody, myself being the first, and everybody takes a bit of a pay cut.
Right.
Let's all kind of work this out together for a little bit, because it's going to be tight, but I think people would respond
Sure.
to that versus
Sure.
laying them off.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, this is what we got to do to get through it. Uh, so in our pre-call, you were kind of talking about how obviously your people is the it's all about the people, and your success is really from your team. You even talked about when you brought on some of your leadership team, how you kind of have them be part owners of the company. Walk us through your journey
Yeah,
there and what did
yeah.
you find? Yeah.
Well, when I started to think about how I could build a company without really employees necessarily, because that's
Mm,
the one thing is you don't have money for employees at the beginning. And so what I did is, all my best friends, and they're all in this industry. I've been in this industry since I was 17 years old, and so I've seen a
that's what
lot
you
of
know,
different
man.
sides
Yeah.
of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like I knew a guy that did this, I knew a girl that did this, and so I approached people that were friends, and
Yeah.
that was also a part-time CFO, and he's our CFO, and he's a fractional CFO by trade. Our CMO, our chief marketing officer, same thing with her. She's got her own CMO fractional business, and she does some other things, but we're blessed to be able to have that kind of talent.
Yeah.
We've got a person that's in the LTL logistical side of the business. We actually have two or three partners that are still working in retailers or sales roles, and then we've got one guy that's a retired sales guy. So we have a plethora, I would say, of experience, talent,
Right.
that's hanging around the office in a sense. We're all working towards getting this done because we all own it. We all do own it, and we didn't necessarily give ownership out as much. It was some money given because we needed it, and then sometimes it's just sweat equity. But
Yeah. Yeah.
we
Totally.
do what it takes to get it done, and we've been we have been blessed to be able to be 3 years and through COVID and still be around. And we've never taken any money from, not to say I wouldn't. If anybody's listening, I'm not saying I wouldn't. You just got to be the right situation. But
Yeah.
we've not found the right situation for us to have outside money investment in. And so for us, that's as good as being a private company where we can still continue to make the right decisions for our company rather than for the private investor that gave us money and he's got or she's got their own way of, because I've seen it tear a lot of companies up, including the ex company that I used to work for.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, that's some of the biggest problems that I talk about with CEOs is in their some of their biggest failures in the past, as has been revolved around aligning with the wrong investors and allowing them to have more control, and then basically shutting down the company, selling off, or would have taken their baby away. And so, I
Yeah.
mean, you're exactly right on that. There's pluses and minuses. On the one hand, you don't have that risk, but on the other hand, you're just not going to grow as fast. I mean, there's just all
Yeah.
there is to
That's
it.
we've had to we've had to buckle down and just understand that we're not. Having said that, what we're really close to being able to qualify now that we're in our third year of being a corporation for an SBA loan.
Yeah.
So we're putting together some things for that. We're newly being able to qualify this month, so we're
Oh,
pretty
very cool.
excited. I Nothing in business goes as you expect, but
Sure.
again, we're intentionally getting there, and so that'll be the first big chance and opportunity because we missed out on every bit of COVID relief, everything, just
Yeah,
by
you
a
were in
matter of
business then.
timing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm okay with that. Listen, I didn't sign up to start my own company, my own brand, or two companies to say, things are going to go real smooth.
Mhm.
I just knew what I want the back end to look of EcoTwist and how I wanted the back end of White Space to look, and then I intentionally just drive towards that every day. But I have to keep
Yeah.
my head down, and I can only worry about, the old saying, like one day at a time. You
Yeah.
have to make sure that you're planned. You have to
Yeah.
make sure that you're doing the things that it takes to get there, but you have to turn off your brain a little bit or it'll just drive you crazy. The anxiety of just not knowing,
Yeah. Yeah.
what the next day brings. It's exciting and anxious at the same time.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. So what are some of the major milestones or things that have happened along your path over these last 3 years that's kind of positioned you for where your company's at?
No, that's a pretty cool question too. The first year, it's like, we're gonna do this. Right. What do you do? Okay, we got to get a formula developed first, and we
Right.
got to find
Right.
the box. We got to find,
Right.
and so I got to tell you, the first milestone was just getting through COVID because when we were set up to go start our selling season, COVID hit, and so
Right.
COVID hit
Ugh.
in the
Oh my gosh.
category
Worst
in a
freaking time
supermarket,
ever. Right. Yeah.
and in my category. of detergent, that buyer would have also been the one that was in charge of toilet paper, bleach, all these other things. And I'm a buyer and I'm not calling you during this time, right? And so we had to basically take a whole year off, but it gave us some time to work more on a website and to sharpen up here and to sharpen up there. And so I felt like that was a pretty good milestone to get through. We're working with a retailer, Harris Teeter, who we have EcoTwist at today. Proudly, we sell 3 flavors there, or not really flavors, but we also work with a company called Zogic. We do detergent for them as well. And we are about to send our first order to DECA, which is the Department of Exchange for the commissary.
Man, that's
I figured,
awesome.
thank
Yeah.
you. I'm the most, outside of being in Harris Teeter, because that's obviously very personal. This is the most proud thing that I know, that in the commissaries all around the world.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
around the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
we're
used to shop
shipping.
at those all the time. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's so cool that and so what we've been doing is getting that order together for that. And so that's our first Eco Box order, because everybody else has wanted to take the bottles, but we're really proud of that box. And so I got to tell you, just the mindset to stick with this box. We're starting to get some pretty cool buzz.
There's so much more buzz, or like you said, around sustainability now more than ever, especially through the pandemic. People are really, really valuing their purpose in life over just,
Yeah, think about the quality of life and what people were able to do when they were home with their kids a little bit more.
Right.
And these
Right.
other, and us as a corporate world, we figured out we don't have to tie down our employees to a desk for them to be able to work. I remember when I was at Harris Teeter, I was ultimately forced between moving to Maryland to be with a girl at the time, and leaving Harris Teeter. I didn't want to, and I could have certainly done my job there. I remember in 2015, I approached them and said, I can do this role remotely. And they said, maybe you can, but you're not gonna. And I completely understood that. And so when COVID, came through, I was like, see, I knew it. There's so much distraction in a corporate office. You wouldn't believe, you would not.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You could be inefficient as heck. I mean, I think it's, Intel did a study. This was like 10 years ago when I was a vendor for them, but they did a study and they calculated that the actual effectiveness of their people was about the actual time that they were doing work related was about 22% of their full day.
I was going to say 20. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Which is just blows me away.
Yeah. But it doesn't but it doesn't change the mindset in any corporation.
No.
Think about how unproductive our folks are.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
totally. We stop by, we chat, we do this, we do that. We meet to have meetings, we meet to be prepared. And if you've got an anal boss that he needs to be in control of everything, or she, then you're going to meet with them to tell them the same thing that you're going to meet with somebody else about. And you want to know why COVID told a lot of people, you know what, I don't need this anymore. I don't need this anymore. And in my old role, I used to get over 300 emails a day, about 50-50 internal and external, because I was a buyer. We've got categories that we run. And so people like me today, we're calling all the time. Hey, this would look great on your shelf and all that, you got that. And then you've got the pressures internally, and there's no time to get anything done. And so you'd have to get there before 6 o'clock, and you can knock out between 6 and 8, enough work to sustain you till sometime after lunch if you needed to.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Let me ask you, Sean. So if you're gonna, and I ask all the guests this, if you were gonna hire a CEO to take the reins for your company, what's the one book you would require that he or she read before taking over for you?
I will one day. I got to tell you, the strength in me is that I understand that I am the leader that we need today. Because it's a lot more gutsy and as it is, but we will need somebody with a lot. We'll get there. We're not there yet.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you, that book, or in my case, it's a podcast. That podcast is called The Strangest Secret. It's by Earl Nightingale.
Okay.
This podcast or the story, I would say, was written in
Yeah.
1953.
Oh,
1953, you think about, we were
yeah.
fresh out of World War II.
Right.
And this guy is who, as you told me, I didn't even really understand how big this guy was at the time.
Yeah.
Uh, but he's got a podcast out called The Strangest Secret. It's 29 minutes long.
Uh-huh.
You can search it, Google it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it really speaks to finding the. I'll tell you, I've listened to it 30 times. I hear it 30 different ways, but
Mm,
it's always the same message: is if you have a goal and you have a purpose and you have somewhere you want to be, and you get there, then you're a success. And if you just sit
mm,
around and don't do anything about it, it's just going to cause anxiety. And it just,
mm.
and again, you listen to it.
Yeah.
You told me, and it meant a lot to me. But there's so many more messages in there. But I think for me, it was, I've never really failed at anything. I never
Yeah.
tried anything really hard.
Yeah.
I kind of just
Yeah.
didn't
If you
think
try
about
hard, you were successful at it. That's all there
yeah.
was to it. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
and if you have 1,000 things in your mind that are going to get in your way of achieving that. But most people have
Mm,
never really failed at a lot of things. It's really what have they
mm,
tried to achieve. And so
mm.
most of us try to achieve only enough to get by. And I'm okay. We're all built differently. And I've been one that my whole life, I've always felt like I've underachieved myself. Didn't
Yeah.
matter why or the
Yeah.
excuse or the
Yeah.
reason. It was just, I didn't feel like I was where I
You
was.
have
And
your
so
own expectations.
yeah, I had my own expectations.
Yeah.
I talk to kids, and I say kids, but my son, my daughter's age, I've got kids between almost 17 and 29,
Right.
with my
Right.
son in the middle at 23. And we're constantly talking to young people about whatever it is that you want, go get it now. Like, don't
Right.
wait till you're 35 years old, 40 years old, and you wake up and you're kind of a middle manager in a great company. But in a sense,
Is that
what's
what you really
okay, it's a
wanted?
great paying job. Am I fixing anything, creating anything?
Yeah, no, thanks for referring to me. I've actually never heard it before. It's kind of funny though. We had talked about it and then I listened to it and no, actually I hadn't listened to it yet. It popped up on my Facebook feed. It was like, there was like a 20-second clip of it. And
Really?
so, yeah, really. So this was literally like 4 days ago. And I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah, Facebook's not listening. I promise, guys.
yeah, no, they're not listening. No, my
Yeah,
phone's right here. They're listening.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
but yeah, so it was really cool. So I listened to the whole thing and then and I was sharing with you, this is like right up the stuff that's in there was fantastic. It was written in 1953 and one of the core components is that our thoughts, whatever you think, if you think it enough and believe it, will come true. And I know that a lot of that's kind of also Think and Grow Rich, but this 30-minute thing is so awesome. And what he talks about in there is one method to do it is you take a card and you write out your goal that you want and you carry it with you and you look at it every day and you listen to that podcast. And dude, I so believe it. I have affirmations right next to my computer. I read it every day. And when I started doing that, that's when shit started changing in my life.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And you know what else he says is like, if I missed I got excited for a minute. Oh,
Yeah.
it was about your goals,
Yeah.
and it's like in your mind, planting things in your mind. He says your mind is fertile. It will take in anything that you give it. If you give it positive energy, it will return to you positive energy. If you give it anxiety and fear, it will return to you anxiety and fear. And we have to control our mindset. And it's, one way to do that is to just write down these goals.
Yeah.
Think that you've already accomplished. He says this too, and it's something that I've always been decent at.
Yeah.
I always see the end goal, but think in terms that you've already accomplished it. When I
Right.
think
Right.
about,
Yeah.
how
Present.
we've done EcoTwist or I've got a lot of things we're working on, but I've already celebrated, and I mean it. I've celebrated some successes already, even though I haven't even achieved them yet, which,
That's pretty
it sucks.
profound, man.
It is it sucks when you get
Either
there
that or you're
sometimes
crazy.
because you're looking to high five everybody. You knew you were going to do this. And so if
Uh,
you don't do it, it's a failure. But yeah, I think if you know you're going to, yeah, think about it in terms of the football team. You hear about it constantly, or any sports team that's got this culture of
yeah.
not winning. And so I had a culture of not winning as a kid because not everybody, some kids are Charlie Brown, and
Sure. That's just how it is.
it's just how it is. And so, but I could have won at any point. I just didn't know
Mm,
that I could. Nobody
mm,
told me that I could. In fact,
mm.
all I
It's a
ever saw,
mindset thing.
it's
Totally.
a mindset, and you've
Dude,
got
I
to
was the same way,
that
man.
culture. Yeah. Every day I get up, every day I swear, I go home beat every night. Every night I go home beat because I fight the day. And then every morning I get up, man, I turn on some music, I get in the shower, I get
Mm,
pumped up. I think about 10 things on my way to work in a 20-minute drive that I'm going to get done. I sit down, I write notes out. And it's like I take every day as a brand new start. That's
mm,
the way I do. And so I just leave the defeat of yesterday at home, and then I
gotcha. Yeah,
try to win
totally.
every day. I
Totally.
don't leave
Yeah.
this office until I accomplish something positive
Look at
every day.
that, man. I love that. Yeah, no, this is a great episode. The podcast that you're the Nightingale, right? What was his first
Earl,
name again?
Earl.
Earl, yeah, Earl Nightingale, yeah. So I sent it to my kids and had made sure they listened to it. And so anybody listening to this, I'm going to put the link in the description for the
And
podcast and have everybody listen to this thing, man. I think
it's
it's
amazing.
very
It's
powerful.
29 minutes or 30 minutes long.
Yeah,
It's
it's
like
nothing. Yeah,
I
yeah,
when I meet somebody and feel like I connect with them, whether that be
yeah,
at a meeting, at here, I'll
yeah,
shoot that podcast. I send a link to it right to their
yeah.
phone.
There
And
you
then
go.
I say, don't even if you're not going to listen to it, just don't
Yeah,
disrespect.
yeah,
I'm just
yeah,
asking
totally.
you to listen.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
They always come back and say, man, that's the coolest thing. I haven't seen it change anybody else's life yet
Uh-huh.
because what you take in is really up to your interpretation and what you need at that time. And for me, that podcast, I need it. I
Very
need it.
cool.
Listen to it when I have hard days, because it's the most simplistic form to success for me.
It's awesome. Man, Sean, it's so great having you on the show. I want to take a few minutes and just summarize some of my takeaways from our time together. One is surround yourself with people on your team who are like-minded, who and build kind of building that business around values and people first, and support the nonprofits, give back to your world, our society somehow. And from what you were saying, like, people get very passionate about that, and especially when they can have a say in what you're actually contributing to. So I think that's fantastic. And when times get tough, do everything you can to treat them how you would want to be treated. People first, things second. And the last takeaway for me was life and success is really all about your mindset. Coming from this podcast, that the strangest secret: be intentional about your future, focus on your goals, and really be cognizant of your thoughts, because your thoughts drive your feelings and emotions, and your feelings and emotions drive your actions. Read them every day and visualize. So I love all of that, man. If there was one takeaway that you would really want the audience to absorb, what would that be, Sean?
I think twofold. One is I wanted to say I think it's tremendous. So to take away on my part from meeting you, I think it's tremendous with your background, serving our country in the Navy.
Oh man, thanks, dude.
Yeah, and you're out here trying to really forge a whole brand new path with yourself. We talked about this is kind of a goal for you as well, right? This is something that you want
Yeah,
to get done, and so
yeah,
uh,
absolutely.
I guess my takeaway from my story, I would say is this, is that every day I want to give up because there's certainly challenges. I
Mm,
don't really want to give up. It's just any day that I start thinking about it, I
mm,
instantly, I instantly go to a better thought. And so
mm,
I don't dwell on a lot of number one, there's no failure. You know,
mm.
a loss isn't really a loss. It's something. It's a learning experience. It's a way
Amen.
to
Yeah,
get past an obstacle. And so,
yeah,
no, I don't bat 1,000
yeah.
every time, but that's not the goal. The goal is to get over a hump and to be successful at whatever it is that you're doing. I got to tell you,
Fantastic.
I'm probably not going to retire with the pedigree of Steve Jobs or even Elon Musk, and I'm
Yeah,
okay with that. I think if at the end of it all, I have started a company or maybe two that support some organizations that will be here long after I'm here, that'll be positive. I know that this has been a positive impact on my children because I've been preaching to them their whole life that they can do whatever it is that they want to do. But
yeah,
I worked, hey, I loved my job. I had a career, but I didn't choose it. And that's okay. That
yeah,
I
yeah,
wanted
yeah.
them to do it. And so this was a way for me to say, you know what? I'm gonna do what I say I'm gonna do. I'm
Very
going
cool.
to do what I say I'm gonna do. And so I'm just you we all have the energy. We don't, maybe not all have the energy, but we all have in us greatness that
Mm,
left at some level of undoneness. And I
mm.
just want to make sure that I don't leave anything on the table.
Love
That's
that,
all.
man. That's a great takeaway. Thanks for sharing that. Sean, if any of our listeners wanted to reach out and get a hold of you for white space branding or for questions of EcoTwist or just any questions from today, how could they do that?
Yeah, I got to tell you, you could get a hold of us at ecotwistclean.com, and you can go to our info
Perfect.
page.
Yeah,
We also have a website. It's called wsbco.net.
cool.
It's our white space website, but we didn't talk a lot about the EcoTwist Clean. I wanted to tell you that wasn't necessarily the purpose of talking about the product, but there we do have a website that will explain what we do, how we do it, why we're different. And I think that's maybe important too to read, because we didn't want to just come up with a product that was unsafe for people,
Right.
but ineffective for what it's actually doing. And so I think that's something I'm pretty proud of too.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. So, Sean, again, thanks again for being on the show. We'll have to have you back on the show in
I'd love
6
to.
months and
Yeah,
9 months, man, and see how
sure.
things are going. And for the listeners out there, please hit the like and subscribe and help us spread the word about what we're doing here. We're helping the up and coming CEOs and future leaders of America and the world just do that much better. So, again, Sean, thanks for being on the show.
Patrick, thank you, my friend. Go Steelers.
Go Steelers! All right, with that, we'll see you on the next episode. Thanks a lot.
All right.